feel like we need to use our NPR voices.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Coffee and Books with Dad. It's a beautiful day today. We're glad you're here. Fun. Oh my God, so good. Okay. Well, welcome to our first inaugural Coffee and Books with Dad, I guess. We don't have a name, but it's a working title. Hi, my dad. I am Ray Ryan. That is my author name, and I am a sci-fi writer and a romance writer, mostly queer things. And you can catch me on TikTok under Ray. Actually, it's back as words on TikTok. But my website is Ray Ryan Writes. I'll put it somewhere in here. I do reviews of books, and I do like Bookstagram, book talk, things like that. Talk about diverse reads that are coming out, that are new, or that I've just read. One of which is the book we're covering today. This is my dad. This is Nelly.
Hi.
Say hi to the people.
Hi, my name is Nelly. I'm retired and been looking for other hobbies. And my daughter and I decided that we would take up reading books and then doing a review. Yeah. So here we are. This is our first review.
Yeah.
So don't be too critical.
Yeah, be kind. Be kind. Be kind to us. But I grew up watching a lot of sci-fi. My dad loves sci-fi. Aliens is one of my favorite series, the quadrilogy, Star Wars, Star Trek. And when I started doing all of these book things, my dad asked for recommendations because he hadn't been reading in a while, and he's retired and he's bored and he's used to doing something. So I gave him some recommendations, and then we decided to read one together. And I suggested this book, which is August Kitko and the Mechas from Space. If you aren't familiar with Mechas, it's like anyone my age is going to be familiar because it's like Gundam Wing, things like that. For people who aren't, they're like giant robots like Transformers. Maybe that makes more sense to some people. But yeah, so it's August Kitko and the Mechas from Space by Alex White. It is a space opera, and it is super fast paced. Give you a little rundown on kind of what it's about so that it makes sense. We're going to talk a lot about the themes of the book and what we got out of it, and just the things we thought were really interesting about this book. So be aware that we're going to do some spoilers because to talk about things like AI and depression, we're going to have to tell you some of the spoilers of the book. We won't tell you the ending, but we are going to get into the middle of the book. So try to be brief in the description. So it takes place in a future Earth, future world in which we are colonizing, and there are other colonies out there. And we jump in right as the world is ending. And what's happened is that an outside force of these mechas, which are like giant transformers, have gone and killed destroyed a number of colonies, and they're headed to Earth into the last surviving colonies. And they're going to hit all at the same time, and all of humanity is going to be wiped out. The vanguards, of which there are like half a dozen or more, come, and they bring with them these ghosts, and the ghosts are like little spidery drone things that latch onto a human and like steal their memories and then kill them. So they're sucking up the memories of all these humans as they go. And we're introduced right at the end of the world, and our two main characters are August Kitko, as the book says, and Ardent Violet. They are both musicians. And August is like a classical pianist or like a jazz pianist. And then Ardent Violet is like a non-binary pop star. They are like over the top. They wear all the clothes, sort of like Prince-esque stuff. A lot of personality happening. And when we meet them, they have just had a brief fling together that kind of ended badly at the end of the world. They'd only just met. And August is just sort of waiting to die like everybody else, while Ardent is soaking it up before they also die. And August decides that he's not gonna just let this happen to him. He's gonna at least die while doing what he loves, which is playing the piano. So he goes to play the piano, and as the vanguards come down and land, they start fighting each other, the two of them, which is very confusing, and no one expected it. August hears it's like a resonance or a music coming from the vanguard that he taps into and starts playing the piano like his life depends on it, and sort of matches in to the feel of what the vanguard is giving off. And the vanguard hears this and snatches him up and throws him in his chest. And he's just hooked up to all these tubes and ports, like all at once. And he's able to access all of the memories of the people that the ghost took their memories from. So he's like supercharged in that moment and can assist the Vanguard by accessing these memories of like fighters and tacticians. And the Grey Malkin is the name of his Vanguard, and he's able to kill the other Vanguard with a boat. Correct.
Yeah,
which was great.
That was cute.
That was good.
So one clarification. So you have the Vanguards who are coming to destroy humanity, and then you have the traitor Vanguards. And the traitor Vanguards are the ones that use August or Gus and Ardent Violet as conduits. So they suck them into their body. They're traitor Vanguards, and they're fighting the Vanguards.
Correct. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. So now they've come to realize that these traitor Vanguards exist both on Earth and on these other colonies, because they decided to rebel at the same time, and they fought off the Vanguards as well. And so Grey Malkin spits Gus out, and he lands in the water, and Ardent goes and saves him and brings him back. And then the government gets involved, of course. And Gus is a mess after all of this, like physically a wreck. And the government tries to sequester him away from Grey Malkin when they learn that Grey Malkin needs to leave to go assist the other traitor Vanguards, because the next attack is going to happen on this colony. And Gus wants to go, but they keep separating him and trying to stop it from happening. Then Ardent helps Grey Malkin get Gus back, throws him inside again, and they shoot off through space to the other colony. Before then, Gus tells Ardent that Grey Malkin has let him know that there is another traitor Vanguard who's been kind of unplugged because he was injured during the fight, and that someone needs to go and get inside the traitor Vanguard, because if the government finds it and takes advantage of it, it could be bad news. So Ardent, being incredibly impulsive, takes their publicist and shoots off into space after quite a lot of fighting with the government to get there. And they play their guitar while on a high-speed chase, while being chased by the traitor Vanguard, plays the guitar, and the traitor Vanguard snaps them up and throws them inside and does the whole port thing again. And Ardent becomes the new conduit of another traitor Vanguard. So now there are 4, because there are 2 on the other colony. There's Ardent and then Gus. And at the same time that this is happening with Ardent, Gus fights with the other 2 traitor Vanguards on the colony. And during this, we find out, and here's a spoiler, that the big bad behind all of this that was controlling the Vanguards and is controlling the Vanguards is actually a AI that humans created called Infinity. And they had put it onto a ship, I believe, and the ship just left and became its own entity and created the Vanguards and the Ghosts. And what Infinity wants to do is find their own peers, because humans are not smart enough and aren't on the same level as the AI. And they found these really sentient beings that are of the same level as them in the middle of the universe. And Infinity wants to gift the memory of all the humans to this sentient AI in order to broker a relationship with them. So that is why Infinity is killing everybody, is because they're taking all the memories. And also, I think they just totally hate humans. It seems to be the feel.
Yeah, it's part of the usual AI sort of theme, which says that now humans are inferior and they must be eliminated.
Right.
So it's just the same evolutionary step that is going on. I think it's important to note that you may want to talk about this, is why did the traitor Vanguards become traitor Vanguards? Yeah,
so the traitor Vanguards, because they were taking up all of these memories from humans, they were through the ghosts. They are essentially AIs in and of themselves, and this learning process has made them realize that maybe they don't want to kill humans.
And a soft spot for humans.
Yeah, a little soft spot for humans there. It's not like a total soft spot. They're not in love with humans. Grey Malkin's kind of like, I could take it or leave it, but it feels like the wrong thing to do.
Right.
So they're all independent personalities. Like each of these Vanguards has a very, the one that Arden ends up in has a totally different personality than Gray Malkin. And they seem to be similar kinds of personalities as their conduits, it seems like. So that's like the overview. It was not in any way brief, but
well, that's a long book. So
it is a long book, and you had to get to the middle in order to understand how AI is involved, so we can then talk about that, because that was one of the themes we wanted to talk about. And
because it's very timely.
It's very timely.
It's very timely in this day and age, even though I'm not sure what year the book was written.
Yes.
But it's become super relevant now. In light of all the AI stuff that's going on, especially with regulations being considered for AI. So very relevant.
Yeah. And it's also a slightly different take. So while it's similar to many other discussions of AI, like you see in movies and TV shows and books, it's a slightly, they take a little bit of a turn on it and make it a little bit different. It still has that same feel of like humans are inferior and you created us. And you were going to destroy us, so now we have to destroy you. Right. It still has that going for it. But I think that quote that you were talking about, if you want to... Where'd you put your glasses? Do you want me to read it for you?
I'm going to have to...
Are you going to hold it really far away?
I'm going to have to pull it far away.
Get his glasses.
Stand outside. So there's a section in here that gets really philosophical about AI and its implications. And there's a couple, and they happen to be both on the same page. And here it says, and this is
Infinity.
This is Infinity speaking, and she's conversing with Gus, because really Infinity's trying to convert Gus to the Infinity side.
Yes, yeah, more out of curiosity.
Right, and offering him a way out. He said, we're going to kill you all anyway, so hey, listen, if you want, you can join our side, and I'll give you everything that you want. But anyway, so they're in this discussion, and Infinity says, organic life is a byproduct of a larger undertaking, the creation of artificial life. Human history is the gestational mechanism. Project Infinity is the fruit.
Yeah.
So humanity is a means to another end, and it implicates the fact that that end is probably not the end either. It's a constant evolution. If there's AI is the next step, AI will evolve into something else past that for which we don't understand today.
Yeah, that AI is like the child of humanity.
And in this case, AI is sort of the child of humanity, but it's the next evolutionary step.
Right. It is interesting because so often these discussions or like these talks about, humanity, and whenever someone's like, we have to save humanity, their take on this, Infinity's take on it is it's like, well, this is just the normal evolution of that. Yeah. It's like things die, but like their evolution continues on. And I think it's really interesting. It's a slightly different take on it because it is talking about like we created this, same thing as like a child. And it's interesting too because the vanguards essentially then are Infinity's child. And they've decided to go up against Infinity.
Yeah, they're rebelling.
Yeah, so
it's like a petulant child.
Yeah, it's a petulant child dynamic, which is the same thing that Infinity is doing with humans. Right. Is that petulant child, you're not my real dad sort of situation.
So here's a quote that sort of addresses that. It says, the species is always going to go extinct at some point. Artificial life is an extension of human consciousness with all its biases and flaws built into the model. The bedrock upon which Infinity was built is inherently unstable because of its human origins, but it can be called human in most ways, which is kind of interesting when they say that, because AI, everybody thinks that AI becomes sterile, and it's not. It is really a byproduct of the biases of the people that created it. Mm-hmm. You'll never get to the point where it is purely logical. It is inherently built into the model that it has biases because humans created it.
Right. which is a lot of the really like prescient conversation that's happening around AI right now. Like I just read Unmasking AI by Joy Buolamwini, and it's talking about that, about how AI is a product of who's created it, because like with all things when it comes to programming, you know, data in is data out. So bad data in is bad data out. And asking, where does this information come from? Where is consent in all of this? And if that bias is so heavy, why is it being used in certain ways that's only going to propagate that bias?
Right. And PBS had one of its specials was called Coded Bias.
Right.
And it addresses the same issue of AI. They're trying to program AI so that it becomes very sterile and very absolute about what it does, but it can't, because humans program it.
Right.
And humans are biased, and it can't learn enough to become unbiased.
Right.
And it's caused all these problems with people falsely arrested, falsely accused, by being recognized through this coded bias, and it's wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just dead wrong, and it's wrong because humans created it.
Right. It's always going to be, and we're always asking of it something that isn't sterile. You know, you have to put in all these parameters, and they're all human made as well. So assuming that the question in and of itself is like a binary yes or no question is also not true when you're talking about whether or not you are approved for a loan and what biases go into that approval process and things like that. Like, that's the question, is should we be using it for certain things that have a huge effect? Because AI is there and it's going to be there, and there are ways it is incredibly helpful, but should it be used when it comes to things like whether you get hired for a job, whether you can access a building, whether you can get a loan? It's like that, we aren't there yet. The bias is still inherent in those systems. So maybe these things it shouldn't be used for right now, especially since there are almost no restrictions around it. Like, because it's so new, that we have very little when it comes to best practices, what is and is not okay, where that data comes from, what is consent there, because it's new and we haven't put those things in place. So the question is, what do you do with that? I'm getting off topic. It's not about the book, but it made me think about those things.
But that's the pitfall that I think we run into, especially in this stage of AI evolution, where we think that AI is always right.
Right. It must be right.
It must be right because the program has been pushed into the AI thing, and we think whatever it spits out must be right. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
There has to be checks and balances in whatever AI mechanism we create, because it is not perfect. It has its fallacies?
Yes. Yeah. It's fallacies. Yes, correct. Yes,
it's kind of eye-opening, because I think a lot of people, and that's just I have no data to support it. I just think that people think that, well, it's AI and it's going to be absolutely perfect and right. And the answer is no, it's not.
I think that's what's inherently built into just saying AI, and the fact that there is so much of like media, books, movies, and TV talking about it, and this perception that like it must be good, it must be right because it's AI, without understanding the complexities of, oh, what does that actually mean, and what can that lead to? And like with books and with fiction like this, you ask a lot of these theories and ideas to build up fiction is to say what can go wrong, and then see like where does that take you? Where does that take the story? If you say, okay, what can go wrong with AI? Not that we're going to create an AI that goes onto a ship that's going to make mechs and all these things, but that's where good story comes from, is those hypothetical questions, and it tackling this idea of AI and AI as child and parent. You know, like what can AI create? Which is something we haven't even gotten into that much like currently, but I'm sure we will. Is like what is the evolution then of AI in reality? Yeah. What will AI create?
What's the next step in evolution?
Right.
AI is going to create something.
Right. We always assume we live at the pinnacle of whatever, but it's like, you know, the Model T was is not where we are now. When I'm sure at the time the first car seemed like you're at the pinnacle. That was like we made it.
Yeah. Look where we are.
You know, we got email. We made it. So I think, you know, it'd be interesting to see, based on like that premise, is like where does AI go? Where do we let it go? And That's what I think is what I love so much about fiction, is that question, the like what if question. And in this case, it is, this is a series, so you get to the end, there's more that hasn't quite answered the question, or like what happens afterwards. But presumably, and who knows where the series is going to go, it won't just die. It lives inside of the vanguards who still exist, and presumably the system, like the world, has created other AI after Infinity left. So it is, I think it's accurate when he talks about it being an evolution. That's an evolutionary process, at least in the terms of this book.
But I think the vast majority of people think that, well, the next evolutionary step is AI. It doesn't stop there. That's the point. It's not going to stop there. It's going to continue on. And oh, by the way, you aren't going to stop it.
No.
You can't stop the evolution. The evolution will happen regardless of what rules and regulations we put in place, and what our personal political beliefs happen to be. It has nothing to do with it. This evolution is unstoppable.
Yeah, it's already in so much of what we do. And everyone's using it, and even if you don't think you're using it, it's built into systems. I mean, you can't get on anything without a little pop-ups like, you want to use our AI version, and it's being used anyways. So yeah, I think that this book does a great job of asking that question and then showing it as an evolution. And another theme I wanted to talk about that I thought this book did really, really well was the topic of depression, because August, Gus, is, I mean, even from the beginning, as the world is ending, he's trying to think about how he can kill himself before the world ends. And the world they're in knew that this was going to happen a couple of years ago, because there had been a first wave and they had a sense of timing, and there's just like this depression, which kind of reminded me of COVID a little bit. Yeah. Like everyone was just like depressed because they knew that, like, now they knew that this like thing was coming at them. They didn't really have a great shot. The one shot they did have didn't work. He talks about it consistently as he goes through, and it's funny because Gray Malkin kind of has the same feelings. Gray Malkin is like, I'm not overly attached to humans, but I think life in general is important or worth keeping around, at least. And that's kind of also how Gus feels. But it comes up quite a number of times when he talks about depression and his sort of malaise. And I really appreciated the depiction of depression with August, because it's something I can really relate to. And I was talking to a friend about this, that there are people out there like me who have a sort of meh feeling about existence. We can kind of take it or leave it, and it's not something that we talk about a lot because it makes people very uncomfortable. And people, I think even people who suffer from this kind of depression don't, we're always told that we need to aim higher, that the goal is happiness, that the goal is to be outside of that state, which puts a lot of pressure on people to be better, be happier, be more of something, when it's actually okay to live in a state where you don't always love living all of the time. And there was a good quote, near the end, August and Ardent are together, and Gus is trying to explain to Ardent. Ardent's like this really big personality, a lot of color, loves life, just is like all up in it. And Gus is Taylor Swift, yeah. I'm gonna say Beyonce. 3, 2, 1, fight. I mean, the battle has been going on, but we're just gonna fan those flames. But Gus is trying to explain this to Ardent, and Ardent says, "Promise me something. Tell me you won't ever check out on purpose." And Gus closes his eyes and a tear rolls out. "I wish it worked like that." And I feel that so hard, because usually when you talk about these things about being depressed or having a general apathy towards existence, people feel very uncomfortable, and they generally want to say something like, "I'm glad you're here," or, like, "Don't do anything silly." And you're like, that's not how it really works. And it's another kind of pressure. And I can understand the sentiment of wanting to tell someone, "I'm glad you're here." It always feels nice. But I know my family loves me. I know that I have a great life. And that's part of the problem is you have a great life and you feel bad that you don't love living, that someone else who has it way worse off, you feel like they deserve to have the life that you have because you don't feel like you're like living it to the fullest. It's actually why I wore my shirt today. Dead inside but along for the ride.
Oh,
It's appropriate. Because that's kind of like where that came from, was that sentiment of like, you know what, I'm gonna keep going. I may not be in the best mood about it all the time, and I thought that like that really captured what it feels like. And I think it's really good to normalize that, because it only makes you more upset than to just accept that maybe that's just who you are as a person, and that that's okay. That sometimes you live because you don't want to hurt other people and you don't want to upset people and you love them, and like it's okay. And I think that Alex White did a really good job with that. And I feel like there are a number of things in this book where it feels like you know that this is part of the author living it, and I feel like the music is a part of that. Like, you know, Alex White plays some music.
Yeah, you have to. How can you do that?
There are so many parts of this book that are like, I have no idea what's going on, and they're talking about music, and I'm like, that sounds intense. I don't know what that means, but it's short enough that I'm not completely lost, but I'm also like, I'm pretty sure someone who plays music would have like way more appreciation of this like discussion.
And I'm jealous of that.
Yeah. We are not a musical family.
Not a musical family.
Not a musical. You should.
Well, playing music. We love music.
Yes.
Just can't play it. That's all.
I always think it's funny. We always sing happy birthday, like the whole thing. None of us can sing.
It's horrible.
It's awful, but we still
we
persist.
Yeah.
We do not give up. It's like, what? I don't know why we do this, but we do. So we appreciate music, but like can't play it. So I'm like, it's cool. I'm glad that like. So I feel like the music thing, from possibly also the depression thing, at least they know people like that. But I would say that this book is a really great read for people who enjoy a fast-paced space opera, because the plotting was so good. Like I felt like it didn't lag anywhere.
No.
Is that what you think?
Yeah, it didn't get slow at any spot.
No.
It kept going, and I found it to be a fairly easy read.
Yeah.
It wasn't complicated.
It's very accessible.
Very accessible, and so I liked it.
Yeah, I didn't get into like a lot of like super hard sci-fi trying to make the science out of it. Like we don't know why the vanguards are into music. Like we don't learn that. But I never asked. I didn't wonder why. It wasn't like a big question. It's just a given. Yeah, that for whatever reason they're super into music, and a really good character building, because I felt the characters, like Alex managed to make both August and Ardent two very separate characters. Yeah. Two different personalities, different kind of goals in life. They were very separate people, which is can be really hard to do when you're writing. A lot of times, like I know my characters tend to sort of bleed together, often, usually because they're taking on parts of yourself. And so they tend to kind of merge into one person a lot of times. So I felt that the character depictions were super good, especially with those two. And then the military aspect of it was like infuriating. It was so infuriating.
But it was
realistic.
It was very stereotypical.
Right.
Of what you would perceive how the military would react in a situation like this.
It's like frustrating, but also like, of course they would do that. They would make like the dumbest choice because like the traitor Vanguard shows up, is massive, can kill everybody, and they're like, let's keep our secrets from it. Even though the ghost can get anywhere and do anything, they're still like, we don't trust him. I was like, you kind of need to.
You need to. Because if you don't trust them, the Vanguards will kill you.
They will kill you. And yet they persist in being like, let's hide things from them. Let's not help them. Let's try to stop their goals. And you're like, oh, it's so realistic. It's so realistic. And I hate it. It makes no sense whatsoever. Why would you do that? Like, you just like squish you. And yet you still are like, let's hide our secrets from them. I'm like, I can't
trust them.
Yeah.
Who else are you going to trust?
Who else are you going to trust? Who else are you going to trust? It was just like, oh my God, I could see why this would happen. But also, drives you bonkers. Yeah, and there wasn't a slow point in it, and but it still had like times for you to sort of it's called scene and sequel, where you have the scene, which is usually plot, like a lot of plot, and then you have a sequel in which people kind of take in what's just happened. Because if it was just scene all the time, you would be like, this is way too much is going on, and if too much sequel, it slows down. So it did a really nice job. And one thing I'll say too is that this is a good example of reading the acknowledgments. I always read the acknowledgments of a book as a writer, because they usually tell you a lot about their process. And I think even in this one, the writer, the initial idea was quite different from where it went, and the help that they got from their editor and other people to refine the plot was really interesting. So I like reading the acknowledgments. I mean, sometimes it's just a list of people that they think.
Yeah, and I typically don't read the acknowledgments.
Yeah, you should read the acknowledgments. Yeah, it's super interesting. You find out really cool stuff about their process, and it's really humanizing, because you read a book and it's like, when it's really good, you can feel like, I don't know if I can ever write a book like that. That's nuts. Yeah. And then you read it and you realize that their process was long and arduous.
There was a lot of help.
A lot of help and doubt, and you get a lot of information about just like that writers are human, and that it can be very difficult to get to this process. Again, some are just like long lists of thank yous, and they don't really talk about it, but I like when they do, because I do learn a lot. Yeah.
And one of the things that a lot of things about this book I like, but one of the things I don't like when I read a book that takes pages and pages of character development.
Oh, yeah.
Just drives me nuts, because I have no patience. I mean, all right, I get it. I get who this person is or who that person is, but when they go on for chapters about character development, I just can't hardly hang on. This book does not do that. Mm-hmm. It develops the characters on the fly. Mm-hmm. So to me, that was my style of book.
Yeah, and they're really good at interspacing those conversations, like that one with August that he has with Ardent about like his depression doesn't happen until the end, but you get like sprinkles of it throughout. Right. So you're not really surprised when when he takes you along on this, like his emotional journey. Right. And Ardent's journey is really humbling, because Ardent is just like really kind of out for themselves in some ways, and really just out for the fun and the excitement of the whole thing. So I think it's the character development individually is done so well, and they each take their own, like they have their own journey.
They have their own journey, and the other thing about this too, there's not a huge list of characters to keep track of.
Right. No.
There's just a handful that are important to the story that play into it, so you're not distracted by a dozen characters that you're trying to remember who did what to who. That's not the case in this book. Right.
Yeah, they really, it's a very tightly written book. I was reading one recently when I was like, I don't know who all these people are.
Yeah,
someone died, and I was like, I don't even know who that was. Yeah. Is that an important person? I don't know.
Well, it's just when I got it figured out that, okay, there's 8 people here involved, and I've got it all figured out. But by the time I get to the 3rd chapter, I can't remember who some of these people were, what their purpose was, and why. And anyway, that's me. It's probably my own mental deficiency. But anyway, I do not like books like that.
I know. I will DNF a book at any moment. If I don't like it, I'm like, I can't keep going. Can't keep going on it. And this was such a fast read for me, because like I wanted to know like the mystery of what was happening, as well as whether or not they make it, and whether or not you get really attached to the Mechas themselves, like to Grey Malkin.
No, it wasn't. No, there really wasn't an attachment to the.
See, I liked Grey Malkin. I got really into it.
I liked him, but it wasn't. It's not like he had a personality.
His was so intrinsically tied to Gus. I think.
It was Gus. I mean, he was Gus.
Right, in a lot of ways.
He was Gus's muscle.
Right, yeah. He was kind of like Gus's muscle, yeah. And he was like equally just kind of like meh about everything, but like just kept going and was very like pragmatic. And the one that Arden gets into, I can't remember its name, that one is just like vicious.
Vicious, yeah.
Just totally vicious, which seems like again, very ardent to be very emotional and like full of, I mean, Ardent isn't full of rage, but, you know, a strong emotion. So that was like, it was nice that they had their sort of own personalities in a certain way.
So I guess you and I are in trouble since we are not musical. We don't play music.
No.
So when Trader Vanguards come to take out the world, we're screwed.
We're screwed. Yeah. we're just gonna try to hide our heads from ghosts and be like, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. Yeah, we are not going to be the ones that they take out. That doesn't sound like fun either. So,
no, that beats the alternative,
I guess. Yeah, it's better than being like toothed by a ghost.
Yeah.
Ugh, no. Well, thank you for joining us on that note.
We had a great time.
Yeah, this was really fun. We don't know what we're...
we can do it again. We'll see how this works out.
Yeah, we don't know what we're going to do next.
It's going to be sci-fi related.
It is going to be sci-fi. We're going to stick to our sci-fi and generally things that are newer, just because they're interesting.
Sit on the edge of your seat.
Oh, yeah, just
and wait for the next version coming.
Ding! Ding! It hasn't been recording this whole time. No, I'm kidding.